Imagine being so comfortable in your fighting skills that you wear on your armor the brightest color ever. Cocky indeed. They are definitely not afraid of being seen, unlike me. I don't want to be seen. Yes, I'm talking about the Imperial Fists. But how do you make this chapter justice? Yellow can be quite tricky. Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you perfect color scheme to reflect their purity and resilience, breaking down each step. Let's go. I started with the dark orange base coat. In this case, it's mahogany brown from AK Interactive. Since you want to know all the paints, there you go, you're welcome. I'll pick a warm base coat to keep the contrast and have saturation in the shadows. I want a warm yellow to reflect the warmth and purity that Imperial Fist have. If I wanted colder shadows, I'd move towards the greenish side of the spectrum. In the very final step, I'm gonna add a color that's gonna give an extra edge to the shadows. So keep watching, please. I mix mahogany brown with ochre, both from AK, 1:1 ratio, and I start covering like a lot of the surface of the model. Listen. Here the value jump is very small. I don't usually use a jump that small, and I wasn't really used to it. Just remember to consider you're painting yellow, not orange, so expand the highlight area and cover 95% of the base coat. I'd say that in the leg areas, it's gonna be slightly less than 90%, but because they receive less light. But you get the gist. You can see that I apply the color, I rinse the brush, and then I feather the still wet paint to blend it in with the base coat. The feathering process is really something that helps me achieve the result that I want, but it does have some issues. Feather color, it will give the surface a little bit of a shit look. Oh, okay, not shit look, but it's a little bit cloudy, a little bit ew, a little bit But don't panic, that's easily fixable with few glazes. You just have to manage the consistency in the later steps. And then move on to pure ochre, thin it down a bit and apply it to the model. This time though, I'm really looking for volumes, covering 60% or so of the model, leaving a little bit of the two previous layers showing through. In the lower part of the model, like I said before, there's just gonna be less light and you're gonna cover less. I go all over the model, identifying the highlight areas and then blending them with the rest of the layers using feathering. But how do you fix the cloudiness of the feathering? You need to learn how to thin your paints properly. I mean, how many times you heard the phrase, thin your paints? I mean, okay, but the topic is so complex, how do you do that? You know, it was so frustrating to hear that and not being able to do it. It kind of reminds me when you feel down or depressed and people say, oh, just don't be sad, or just don't be stressed, just don't have anxiety. Yeah, bro, that was helpful. No one ever deep dives into the different types of consistency, and hopefully I will change that soon, wink wink. But in the meanwhile, I made a little visual guide for you to download for free in the description. It's kind of a cheat sheet for consistency and it should help out a bit. Following the consistency cheat sheet, you want to apply a fat glaze with the color you used in the previous layer and then apply it to the areas where you feather. This will create kind of a heavy filter that will cover up the ugly cloudiness. But anyhow, after finishing this whole armor, I then move on to the final highlight layer. I then put volcanic yellow from AK on my palette in order to pump the saturation of my highlights, which for now it looked kinda dull and sad and I thin it down a bit and apply it over the ochre areas, covering like 95% of the ochre areas. These tones of yellow tend to be a nightmare to work with. The idea was to build up opacity and volumes with more covering paints, to then saturate the highlights with a less covering yellow, like this one. Although I thought it was slightly warmer than it would look. So it's a little bit colder than I thought, but yeah. I'm taking a break from the armor to give a little bit of definition and better read the direction of my paint job by blocking all the other parts in black. This step can be quite a bit unnerving. Black on yellow, every single brushstroke a bit of terror sinking in my soul, being relieved only by the end of the brushstrokes. Okay, I mean, seriously now, it doesn't need to be as scary, it's just paint. If you make a mistake, you wash the brush, you load it up with a little bit of water, and you rinse the black paint away. Then it's just a matter of tapping the surface very delicately with a paper towel or something, and there you go. Before I move on to the last process on the armor that's gonna give it a I'm gonna do a bit of edge highlighting and recess shading using pale yellow from AK Interactive and mahogany. Off camera, after I finished all the paint job, I did do some more to separate all the plates. You don't really need that. I did it just because I had spare time. To finish the armor, I unsheath, whatever the word is, my secret weapon, burnt red from AK, thin it down more and more and more and more and more, and then I apply this thin glaze to the deepest shadows. Don't leave yet, because I have a cool technique to show you for the red parts, the chest eagle, the trims, so don't leave. Remember to remove the excess so I can control the amount of liquid on my brush. This will give even more saturation to the shadows. I could do some chipping on the armor, but I didn't really feel comfortable with that. It would have taken way too much time. Off camera, I did add some recess shades, and here I start base coating the chest eagle and the red parts with burnt red or corn red, whatever you want, and we will then move on to the final interesting technique I'm gonna show you for this video. I then highlighted the areas with ivory. Playing Space Marine 2, I just fell in love with how they render some of the reds, and I was kind of going with the same look. I painted this a while ago, and I was starting to connect the dots on a new technique I'm working on, and that I already mentioned in my newsletter. It was really well received, and I will expand more in a video. All I do in this step is apply the ivory in the highlight areas and feather it out. I then take this speed paint from Army Painter, you can see on screen, and apply it on the whole surface. Tinting the pale sand ended up with a very bright and saturated highlight area, while also creating a nice, effortless transition. Nice! Off camera, I added the decals and painting in the rest of the boring stuff. And now the final reveal for all the moments you were waiting for. And if you want to see more Space Marine chapters, click here and you won't be disappointed, brother. That's my father's job, being disappointed in me.